Looks like we are live on a Thursday evening, and welcome, Truth Proofers. Welcome to another show from the Truth Proof team, and welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Les. And I don't know what it's like where you are, but horrible, miserable day rolled into night. But it's brilliant to be sat here again and sharing a bit of information with the great supporters of Truth Proof. And what an incredible guest I'm so thrilled to be talking to tonight, and I know you are. Yeah. So, yeah, it's been good. What's been happening? It's been your birthday, hasn't it?
Well, celebrating my 70th birthday yesterday. Not something you really look forward to, folks, but it does creep up on you. Crept up on me just overnight. And, so I had a day off doing any Truth Proof work and just went to see a few friends yesterday, Paul. But I enjoyed myself.
Yeah, good. Yeah, well, I'm sure many people wish you happy birthday, Les, and that's brilliant. And here's to many more.
Well, that reminds me. Yeah, thanks for all the best wishes and everything, and the Facebook tags and everything. Great.
Well, do you know, before we even got to it, Dragonborn said birthday blessings, Les. So thank you. And let's just have a look at a few of these people in chat. We've got Al Durham, Martin Abbas, Fred Flintstone, Steve Tree. Is it T's or T's? Bill 999, Declan Walsh. I'm sure Linny will be in, but I don't see him. Mrs. Linny, Jackson Hills, good to see you, Jack, and nice to speak earlier. Be a Monster, Disabled Welshman, Andrew Sheenham, Awake, Tino, We Are 138, Evening Gang, yeah, and evening to you, mate, Deb Shaw. And let's have a look. We've got 90 people in chat, and I'm pretty sure that I've probably spoke to about 15 to 20. Mel Suter, Mark Allroyd. Hey up, Mark. Good to see you. We need Mark on here on Sunday. Don't have to go on camera. Tell him about what that torch beam hit, Mark, because it was special. I think it was. Billy G, AMG. Let's have a look. Fred Dog. We can go on and on. I've got to stop. So
yeah, and
William
just
Nielsen.
on the YouTube stats, folks. I just had a look, and there's about 40% of people watching these videos or the streams or any of the videos that we put out that are not subscribed, and 38% who are subscribed. So if you're not subscribed, please do.
Well, yeah. Obviously you don't have to, but we'd appreciate it. And as we say every time, it's absolutely free. And just one more thing before we go to our guest. Brilliant spending time with Sarah and Carl Dan this week on Cliff Tops. I'm not going to sell Linny and Pete because it's every week that. And Jenny and Heidi. And just had a lovely time, just sharing hours in what were terrible conditions, but great people. So thank you.
Oh, okay.
Little aliens.
Oh, you've got some little aliens. I noticed them earlier, Paul. They look great.
Patrick Daniel.
I'm going to disappear, Paul, and we'll bring your guest on for this evening, Mr. Steve Stockton. So let's have a look.
Okay. Hiya, Steve.
Hey, how you doing, Paul? Thanks, Les.
I'm good. It's great to see you, my friend. And happy birthday to Les.
Turning 70 is better than not turning 70. Let me tell you, I was 60 last year, so it does creep up on you. I couldn't wait to be 18, and then I blinked, and I was 30, and then I blinked again, and I was 50, and now here I am 60. But the good side of that, I married a wife that's 22 years younger than me, and 3 weeks ago today, gave birth to our son, Holden Chandler Stockton.
Fabulous, and you told me about that, a long time ago, and I just kept it to myself, and so thrilled for you both. It's absolutely brilliant. And,
thank you. He's a gift from God.
Absolutely. And anybody that isn't familiar with Steve Stockton, and I'm sure a lot of people within the subject who are watching this tonight will be, absolutely monster channels on YouTube covering the strange and unusual, all things unexplained. And Steve shares these accounts and experiences like nobody else. He's also the author of, let me just look here, My Strange World, Strange Things in the Woods, National Parks, Disappearances, Legends and Stories from the Appalachian Trail. So we're going to hear some incredible accounts tonight. And I know that Steve's a little bit sleep deprived also. So
just a little bit.
So we're actually, we're fortunate that he's going to share it with us. So where did this begin, Steve?
Well, the interest in the paranormal started when I was about, I was between 4 and 5 years old. I saw a full body apparition. I was out in the front yard. We lived on a farm out in a rural area, and the driveway was exactly 212 feet long. I found that out later on. I measured it when I was doing BMX sprints when I was older. But I was standing out in the yard. I saw a car coming down the hill. There was an inverted T intersection there, and it stopped at the stop sign. And suddenly, from behind the car, a child, like a toddler, runs out crossways in front of the car, runs down into our yard, trips, falls, and just disappeared. And even at between 4 and 5, I thought that's not supposed to happen. Little kids don't run into the yard and fall down and disappear. I didn't take my eyes off the spot. I went right to it, and nothing there. No hole that a child could have fallen in. Nothing that I could have mistaken for a child. And I trust what I saw, because I can even remember the outfit he was wearing and everything. The driver of the car didn't seem to register that he even saw it, period. And I even went back into the house and got a shovel and went out there and dug to see if there was anything, hidden in the ground. And in some ways, I've still yet to put that shovel down. Some 55
Yeah.
years later, I'm still digging to see what's out there.
What came to mind instantly then, and I'm probably way off course here, but you obviously spoke to your parents about it. You shared it with them.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about time slips and sort of parallel worlds, do you think it could have been you?
Possibly. Now, I've given that thought recently, that it was something that happened in a different time, in a different place, because years later, I dug into the history of that road. That road was named after my grandparents. On my mom's side, they had a dairy farm on that road. And nowhere in the history of that was there a missing child or a small child that had perished on that road or anything like that. So that's the only thing I can think of. I was seeing something from another time and another place.
Yeah. Because I suppose that's first thing we all look for. We think, oh, is this a spirit or a ghost? But it doesn't necessarily have to be, does it? I mean, obviously we've no idea, but it just could be a parallel existence.
Yeah.
And one of them we're never going to know. Like you said, you've never put that shovel down, and that put you on the path, I suppose, that you're on today. And were there any other experiences in childhood?
Oh yeah, lots of them. I'd had experiences before that. I'd seen lights and things in the house that apparently only I could see. As I got older, I had experiences in the woods. I had something chase me out of the woods that I couldn't see when I was about 8 years old. It was big. I mean, it was knocking the tree branches and stuff a lot higher than my 8-year-old head, but there was nothing there. I could see it kicking up leaves in its wake, and I could feel the ground shake a little bit, but there was absolutely nothing there. That happened when I was 8. I was about a quarter mile away from the house. We had a big farm, and I was out in the woods just messing around, and ran screaming back down the hill to the house. My mom heard me coming and was out on the back porch to see what I'd gotten into this time. I ran right past her, went inside and hid under the furniture. And then when my dad got home, my brother just happened to stop by. They went back up there where this had happened. I refused to go. I stayed down the hill. And they could see evidence that something had been up there, but they don't know what. And they quizzed me. Was it a bear? Was it a deer? Or was it, I knew what all those things were, even at 8 years old, of course, because growing up in rural East Tennessee, it was none of those things because I couldn't see it. And flash forward 7 years later, I was 15. We were getting ready to move away from there. We'd sold the farm. And I was just knowing, that I would never see it in the same format again, that if I ever went back to visit, it wouldn't be our property or anything like that. So I was kind of walking around looking at all my old childhood haunts. And I went back up to that ditch where that happened. And I just kind of looked down in there and chuckled to myself. I wonder what that was that scared me all those years ago. Of course, back then, the difference between 8 and 15 seemed like a lot. That's just a blink now. But I turned around, started to walk away, and I heard a familiar sound, and it was something in the leaves. I turned back and looked, and once again, whatever was in that ditch came up over the lip of it, was headed straight for me. Now, I didn't run screaming and crying that time, but I didn't waste any time getting back down the hill. But again, didn't see anything. I could see the effects it was having on the trees and the leaves and stuff on the ground, but nothing there. Now, then there's more to this. I'm going to unpack it a little bit further. Now that was at 15. Well, 6 years later, I'm 21. I'm living in West Knoxville. I was working at a place, and a guy that I worked with invited me to like a house party after work, and I didn't know anybody besides the person that I worked with. Didn't really even know him, but I went. There was like some condominiums, and they were in the clubhouse by the swimming pool having a party out there. And there were some girls there that had a Ouija board, and they were going around the room asking people questions and things. And when they got to me, I thought, I've got a head scratcher for you. I said, what scared me as a child? And that was, I left it at that. I'd never told that story, not even to the guy that I worked with, certainly to nobody else there. So they asked the board, the planchette starts moving, and it spells out WATERSPRITE, water sprite. And they looked at me, and I just shrugged my shoulders. And then they made a joke. Oh, well, the board's thirsty. It wants a drink of water. It wants a Sprite. And ha, ha, ha. So they just gave up and moved on to somebody else. But that kind of stuck in my head. The next day that I had off, I went to the big library downtown. Remember when you had to go to the library to look stuff up?
The information, yeah.
That's been years ago. And I went to the big library downtown. I went to the reference librarian, and I asked her, I said, what can you tell me about a water sprite? So she heads off into the stacks, comes back a few minutes later with a big stack of books, and had things about mythology and the fae folk and things like that. And she showed me some pictures of some water sprites and some woodland spirits and things. And these aren't like the little twinkly fairy folk. These are elemental type creatures that are huge and scary. And the interesting thing, that property that I grew up on, it had 7 natural springs, 1 artesian that came up out of the ground, of course, and then 6 that flowed out of hillsides into one big creek that went down into what had once been a river. It had been dammed up and made into a lake. So what better place to run into a water sprite than a piece of property where there were 7 natural springs there?
Yeah.
So according to the Ouija board, a water sprite was what used to chase me out there. For what reason, I have no idea. I haven't gotten that far yet, but
it's fascinating though, Steve, isn't it? And do you know, we were only talking, I think it was last week, about the fae.
Yeah.
And I kind of suggested, what if they're responsible for most of the things that people are seeing and experiencing? You talked about this thing, moving branches, heavy footfall, and we don't, and we think of these things as diminutive little Tinkerbell type winged things, and they're not when you get into the history of the fae. And it's almost akin to a Bigfoot type creature chasing you through. If it were a bear, Steve, it would have caught you at 8 years old, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But I believe that, and I've made I think 5 videos so far about missing people and the fae theory. And if you look into that, some of the folklore and things, and in some of the countries, particularly the Celtic countries, there was a time when the fae was almost, and may still be, like a religion. I mean, those people take it very, very seriously. And I've mentioned it before, and people that believe in UFOs, believe in Bigfoot, Dogman, these other things, you mentioned the fae, they kind of giggle at you. But if you dig into it really deep, a lot of those creatures are under the umbrella of the fae. There's stories going back to the 1800s about people encountering hairy men in the woods that are part of the fae. Well, there's your Bigfoot. There's another story I uncovered where I think it was in Wales, I think, where some men encountered a flying horseless carriage that came out of the sky. It had little men in it, but it was fae folk. Well, there's a UFO encounter or an unidentified object. So it all kind of falls under that umbrella. I think more needs to be looked into it.
Absolutely. I'm definitely on the same page as you there. And this case in Wales, then I'm assuming it's folklore. We're going back in time. And they would describe an horseless carriage. We're looking at a UFO, aren't we? Really?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's all they would have to reference it to.
And so I know we didn't probably plan on dwelling on this scary moment when you were being chased, but when you went back at 15, what are the chances of having another experience on that day? It's almost like it's always there. But do you think that your mind connected with it more than the presence of speed?
There was something about me that it didn't like. And I've always been an intuitive in things, and I think that maybe that's what it was. I don't know, because I'd sent other kids up there. I mean, that was kind of mean of me, but I'll admit it now. But I would stand down the hill. I'd have my friend come over from school. And I'd say, Johnny, go stand up there on the edge of that ditch and tell me if you see anything. And then I'm down here behind a tree, peeking around. It didn't seem to bother anybody.
No.
I said my dad, my brother went up there, nothing chased them. It was just me that it didn't like. And again, I don't know where that part comes into, but I've been told it's because of my genetic makeup. If you go onto places like Gaia.com and look at people that have RH negative blood, and I've got green eyes, I've got RH negative blood. I think I'm more alien than I am. I don't have the monkey blood that the RH positives do. And in fact, there's some question as to where the RH negative even comes from.
Right.
It may be off planet. So I couldn't tell you, Paul. Now, again, that's some tinfoil hat woo territory there, some deep rabbit holes, but who knows? I mean, there's so much that we don't know and we don't understand.
Well, I bet, Steve, when you started looking into this and now you've amassed all this information and people coming to you with different accounts and things that you're reading, I bet where you were at the beginning of this journey, and I don't mean childhood, I'm talking, let's go back like 15 years. Are you in a different place today to what you think this is?
Not really. If anything, I have more questions than I started with, but that's part of it. And, if we had all the answers, the journey wouldn't be half as much fun. But it's like I said, that one encounter that started me on a lifelong journey to see what's out there and what it does and why it's there, and to try to find out. But again, I gave up looking for answers a long time ago. I'm on to the next set of questions. I was on a radio show once, Soraya Askath, called Where Did the Road Go? And he likened just the paranormal in general to trying to do a big jigsaw puzzle, but without the benefit of the box. So you don't have a picture to even see what you're trying to put together. And then the farther you get into it, you realize that some cosmic joker has mixed together maybe a dozen jigsaw puzzles. So you're going to pick up pieces that don't fit anywhere in the picture you're trying to make. And I thought that was a very apt analogy.
Yeah, it is. And do you think that the UFO phenomena and the Bigfoot phenomena, ghosts, do you think there's a link between them?
I think it's all connected, Paul. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't know in what way, but I think there's a connection everywhere in there. And like I said, that umbrella with the Fae, that's kind of, because you look in some of the historical accounts and things, all the native indigenous tribes here in the U.S., the Cherokee, the tribes up here where I'm at in New England, they all have stories of little people.
Yeah.
Out in the Pacific Northwest, I lived out there for a while. I lived in the Mojave. All these native cultures have stories of little people. They also have stories of giant hairy giants, whether it's Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Sabe, whatever you want to call it. It's all this is there, and we're just discovering more about it, I think. And I think because we've lost touch, we're not in touch with the land like our forefathers were, and like the indigenous people. I think a lot of that's been educated out of us, if you will, because my grandmother, who was born in 1895, she knew these things. She knew a lot of the superstitions and folklore. She grew up in the Cades Cove area, the Great Smoky Mountains, and they knew how to read the signs, and they were into spiritualism and all that around the turn of the last century. But she was a self-professed gypsy witch, and I don't know where the gypsy part came in, but probably somewhere back in her lineage. There was an old country that they came from. But nowadays she'd be called a kitchen witch or a mountain witch, is what they call them in Appalachia, where she's at, or where she was. But she told fortunes, read tea leaves, coffee grounds, animal entrails, practiced phrenology, which could feel the bumps on your head and tell you things about your future. Yeah. And she had some insights that I can't explain. That's all I can say about that.
I don't know whether you've done this before and whether you've even got any information, but have you got any stories or things that she shared with you that our listeners would find interesting?
Oh gosh, a head full of them. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But out of all the grandchildren, she had 10 children, 9 boys and 1 girl, which was my mother. So there was a whole slew of grandkids. Well, out of all the grandkids, I was the only one born down south in Appalachia. They call it being born with a veil over your face. But all that was, I was born in caul. The amniotic sac was still stretched over my head when I was born. They had to cut it away. And in my granny's superstitious eyes, that was a special thing. And in fact, she saved the afterbirth, the amniotic. So I don't know what she did with it. I hope she didn't make soup or something out of it and serve it to my relatives, but she kept that. I know people frame them and do things like that with them. But I was the only child out of dozens of grandchildren that was born with that condition. And it is rare, but not exceedingly so. And again, it's just, the amniotic sac over my face.
Yeah.
I don't see anything. I don't think it gives me special powers or not, but she thought it did in her eyes. And so that made me suddenly her favorite grandchild. And when I got a little bit older, she lived on this big Victorian, there'd been a dairy farm in a big Victorian farmhouse. And the dairy farm was no longer in business. They truck farmed too, tobacco and corn, and they also had hogs and cows and things like that. But she's left alone there on this big farm, this big old farmhouse, and one of my aunts stayed with her. They had a quilting room that had once been a formal dining room. And during the wintertime, her and my aunt Frenchie, they called her, would cut pieces for quilts, put them in bags. And then in the winter or in the other times, she had a quilting frame set up in that what had once been the dining room, and she pieced her quilts together in there. And that room was verboten. None of the grandchildren were allowed in there because there's sewing machines and needles and stuff she didn't want messed with. And she would take me into that room with her and tell me some bit of folklore or superstition or a charm or something like that. And if I could repeat it back to her with that met her satisfaction, she would reward me sometimes with something like a Hershey bar or maybe a crisp new dollar bill. And back then a dollar bill was big money for a kid. They'd buy a soda and 3 or 4 comic books. So I would do my best to learn what she was trying to teach me. And one of the most standout incidents to me, time we were on the way to her house. We lived about 25 miles from where she was at. And on the way there, there's an old state road. There was a particular place we had to go by where there was another farmhouse set up on a little hill. Well, years and years prior, a child had run down the hill from that farmhouse chasing a ball, ran out into the road, and been struck and killed by a car. And I was in the back seat laying down. This is in the days before seatbelts and all that. I was laying down in the back seat of probably a 64 Chevy 2 and reading a comic book. And I just felt this weird, creepy sensation like a prickling on the back of my neck. And I raised up and looked, and sure enough, we were driving by that farmhouse where that kid had been, unfortunately, met his demise in the road.
Yeah.
So I go back to my comic book. We drive on, get to her house. My mom and dad are carrying stuff in. She whisked me away to the quilting room, and I don't remember exactly what little superstition or charm or anything she was trying to teach me that time, but she talked about feeling things. She said, "You feel things." And I said, "Well, yeah, I've got feelings you can hurt, or if you pinch me, I can feel it." She said, "No, you feel things like that spot on the highway when you're on the way here tonight." And I just, my jaw hit the floor. I hadn't mentioned that to anybody. I didn't mention it to my parents. I certainly hadn't mentioned it to her, but she knew that I had experienced something when we just passed by there in the car. And it was like, oh my God, she can read my mind. I have to be careful what I think now. It scared me. It kind of, but
Yeah.
She routinely did things like that. There was the area where I grew up when she lived there back in the day. People, especially teenage girls, would go to her to get their fortunes told. And I met a lady much later in life. She was in her 60s, I think, at the time. And her and some girls, when they were in high school, had gone to my grandmother to get their fortunes told. Mama Bessie was what everybody called her. And they had to walk a couple of miles to get there. And on the way there, Anna was the one lady that I was talking to. She said, I was with these 2 other girls, and they wanted to get their fortunes told. And she said, I'll go along with you and do it, but I don't believe in it. I think that Mama Bessie, just full of hooey, doesn't know what she's talking about. So they get there, finish the 2-mile hike. They rap on the door. My grandmother comes to the door. Yes. And Mama Bessie, we're here to get our fortunes told. She kind of looks at him and she said, I'll tell yours and I'll tell yours, but I won't tell yours. She pointed at Anna and said, because You don't believe in me. You mocked me. I'm not going to tell your fortune. And she said, there was no way. She said that we had that conversation when we were a couple of miles from her house, but she knew what I'd said about her. So there you go. She had ways of knowing things like that I have no explanation for.
It's a crazy insight, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I bet you there's people in chat. I bet there's people who'll listen to this afterwards who'll think, yeah, I knew somebody who could do that. But I mean, that is incredible. Steve, your dad, I think he came from a scientific background. What were his views on all this?
It was just the opposite. I had the superstition on my mother's side and the science on my dad's side. And I said that I was the perfect union of science and superstition sprang forth, totally bewildered. And I'm still kind of there. But yeah, he grew up over in Middle Tennessee on a farm, a little more hard scrabble Appalachia over there. But he escaped, got out and went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and later became a scientist at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So he had some beliefs, and he believed in things to a degree, but he was very science-minded of the scientific principle for things. But he would say, he talked about there at the laboratory, there were experiments and things that they would do where things happened that weren't supposed to happen. And this is under laboratory control conditions.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get it to happen again, and they don't know why it happened, but it did. And he said, that's the way I look at things like the paranormal and things. There's some things that we just can't explain, that the supernatural can't be governed by scientific laws, because those are laws that man has created that we use to measure things with. And it works for most things. But there is that aspect of it that we don't have any idea.
Did he give you any examples of one such, or he would just give you that analogy?
He just gave me just a basic there, but he worked in metallurgy and things like that, so there's no telling what they were working with and what they were doing. Part of that, they would take different metallic alloys and expose it to high levels of radiation, then cut that metal and look at it under a microscope and see how molecularly the radiation had changed. And they were doing that as part of the space program and part of the arms race and things. This was, started out during the World War II and right after, and then throughout the Cold War when he was out there. They, back, my dad, my mom met while working out there on the Manhattan Project.
I see. Right. Okay.
My parents were old too, so it doesn't make me feel bad having a kid at 60, because my dad was close to that when I was born.
I can't say that there'll be anything wrong with you and your parenting, Steve, because I know how much love you've got a bit before the child's birth and how much love you've got for him now. Yeah, so indeed. It's absolutely perfect. Like your channel, Steve, it covers everything: the cryptids, the missing people, ghosts. And you know, our listeners love hearing accounts. What about ghosts? What, in your opinion, are ghosts? Are they deceased people? Are we being tricked? Are they some sort of effect from unexplained phenomena that's showing us things that we might want to see, but it's not really that?
Yeah, there's several different fields of thought there, and I can't say that any one is more or less right than the other. Excuse me. But I think sometimes they can be maybe the spirits of loved ones. I don't know. I've heard, again, different things about that. But then there are also things that can mimic other people, or people that may not even be people at all. I've covered cases where people were lost and would hear what sounded like the voice of a loved one, or in one case, their own voice calling to them from a cave. Come in here, you'll be safe. And I don't know about you, but if I hear any voice calling to me from a cave, especially my own voice, I'm going to run the other way. I don't want any part of that. So, I've had a couple of pastors on my radio show before, and they talk extensively about the Nephilim and the fallen angels and how they're up to trickery and can do things like that. So I don't know. They could be spirits. They could be something interdimensional. They could be the Nephilim. They could be aliens. They could be something that's government or dark black ops type stuff, Project Bluebeam and things like that. There's a lot of deep rabbit holes in that as well. But I think there's something out there that either we don't understand, or we're not meant to understand it yet. But there are spiritual things that go on around us all the time.
So the Nephilim, Steve, the fallen angels. Am I right? And
Yeah.
what are your views on the Nephilim being the creatures that people call Bigfoot? And
Yeah, well, I can see that too. And again, that kind of falls within the Fae theory. There's I've read some very good arguments that the Nephilim, the Fae, are actually the Nephilim. And
this is where I was at the beginning of this, wondering if they're responsible for it all.
And if they are, then that explains all the other stuff too. And again, it's all connected. And there's a lot of Earth things that go on too, like the ley lines that you have there and the things like that. There's the Schumann resonance and things. Every living thing is connected to some degree, I think. And then there are these spiritual and paranormal things, and there's a connection there too. And I think we're either not smart enough to figure it out yet, or we're too smart to figure it out yet. Sometimes you have to step outside of that scientific box. And then that was what my dad said. And I had another person, a religious person, one time tell me, he said that everything that we see around us is the natural. He said, but if you believe in the Bible and things like that, all of this that we consider the natural was spoken forth out of the supernatural. So naturally, there's going to be things that we can't explain. And that kind of makes sense in a round robin sort of way, I think.
Absolutely. And you'll have come across this, and I'm sure people in chat will have come across it, with the people that kind of frown on what you're interested in and what I'm interested in, and the Fae, the cryptids, everything. Yet these same people will take their child to be christened, they'll get married in a church, they'll go to church in some instances. So they're placing their faith in a supernatural being, something that, and they don't like that. Some people, they don't like to be put in that box of the strange and unusual. But I don't think it's any less different to what we're involved in. Yeah,
and again, depending on the religion, and I'm no religious scholar or anything, but there are beliefs in there. I made a video on my 13 Past Midnight channel a couple of years ago, the Virgin Mary visited by angels or aliens. And it put forth, I didn't write it, I just put it together, narrated it. But the writer made some very good points based on scriptural reference. Were these the angelic beings, were they what some people would consider aliens? And I know that's heresy in some circles, but again, who knows?
Do you know, I am on the same page once again, and we touched on it a week or two ago. Two ladies who lived in a little village called Sprockley, not far from here, 20 miles away, 15, 20 miles. And they had a alien visitation, UFO sightings, and then what they perceived as beings around their bungalow. But afterwards, Muriel, the mother, who was in her 80s, believed that this was spiritual and biblical. Almost, these were angels or some kind of angelic being. The daughter, they were aliens. The difference in age kind of, well, it just threw a different slant on it, So yeah, fascinating. So a lot of your writings and work, Steve, have revolved around the missing people. And do you want to talk a little bit about that to us? Do you want to share a little bit of information about the missing people?
I can tell you how I
touch on it loads, and because I'm always conscious. Sorry for cutting through you there, Steve. I'm always conscious, and I'm probably too cautious. That
I can tell you how I got started on that, right?
Yeah, go on then. Please do.
Yeah, the way that started, Father's Day, June 1969. Dennis Martin, 6 going on 7, disappeared in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in the Spence Field area near Cades Cove. And I lived in the same town as Dennis, Knoxville, Tennessee. And I was just about a year younger than him. He was 6 going on 7. I was 5 going on 6. And of course, locally, it was big news. It was in all the newspapers, on all the 3 TV stations that we had at that time. I remember a time when we only had 3 stations. But I thought, that was just like a loss of innocence for me. That was the first time I realized that, a little kid, much like myself, can go missing and no sign. They didn't find anything. They never really found anything. They found what they thought might be footprints. And years later, there was rumors of a skull, but there was no proof of any of that. And I followed that case from day one. And every day there for a while, Knoxville had 2 papers at that time. The morning paper was the Knoxville Journal, and the evening paper was the Knoxville News Sentinel. And somewhere, I think they're at my brother's house, I've got 2 or 3 scrapbooks that I filled up with clippings about that case. So I was heavily invested in that one. And again, every day I would think, that they're going to find him. They're going to find something. And it never
Never
happened.
found
And
it.
his father passed away. This guy has been a dozen years or more now on Halloween, no less, and went to his grave without any closure. And that just had to tear that man up. And I met his father. I talked to his father. It was in a different context, but they did an interview with him on one of the local stations here in Knoxville, and it was probably the 40th anniversary of the disappearance. And he said, one day he said, I feel like I'm going to be sitting here and there's going to be a knock at the door.
He's going to walk in.
Go to the door and be a young man stand there and said, okay, another reporter wanting to talk to me. Open the door. Yes, how can I help you? And this good-looking young man's going to say, Dad, it's me. It's Dennis. I've come home. And it just, that tears my heart out, because it never happened. It never happened. But I even went out, we lived out in the country. We were about an hour or so from the Smoky Mountains, but that's by car. But in my little 6-year-old mind, I thought, well, we're not that far from the mountains. Maybe he got lost and he wandered down this way. So I went out on the rural country road where we lived on my Swin Stingray and pedaled around and looked in the weeds and the bushes for him and in the woods and stuff. And I even left some snacks and things. I thought, well, maybe he's hungry. I'll put something out here for him. But, sadly, that wasn't the case. So, again, that's one of those. It's just a head scratcher to this day.
What were the context then, Steve? Were he out with his parents? Were he in Woodland alone?
He was with his dad and his granddad. And again, it was Father's Day. They were doing kind of a boys' day out and had his brothers with him. And they had gone for a little camp picnic hiking thing. And they met another family there at where they were at. They were also named the Martins, but no relation. But that is a fairly common name in East Tennessee. And the kids kind of banded together and were playing. And depending on which story you hear, they were either playing hide and go seek or they were going to sneak up on and scare the adults. But Dennis was wearing a red jacket or red sweater. So the other kids convinced him that he should hide somewhere apart from him so they wouldn't be seen. Now, this is the one story. And then his dad actually saw him go behind a clump of bushes. And then when the other kids came out and did their jump scare or whatever they were doing, he was like, well, where's Dennis? And they're like, well, we haven't seen him. His dad went to the clump of bushes where he saw Dennis last, went around it, went in it, no Dennis. So he alerted his dad. His dad took off down to the ranger station, and his granddad took off down to the ranger station, and his dad took off in a dead run down the Appalachian Trail. It goes right through that area there. No sign of him. And there was another family in another area of the park, the Key family, that had heard a scream, what they described as a blood-curdling scream. And then they saw, again, accounts differ, they saw what looked like a rugged man with something red over its shoulder running up a hill. They were trying to spot a bear. Oh, sorry.
It's fine. Do you need a drink? Do you need a drink?
A little coffee there. It's cold and rainy here today in New England. So
same here.
But they again, there were different stories about that. There were stories about somebody getting into a truck, but Dwight McCarter, he's retired now. He was a ranger there at Great Smoky Mountains National Park, one of the trackers that assisted on the case. He talked about some wild men that lived in certain areas of the park, and that's where kind of like stories of the feral people, and maybe there's a channel here on YouTube called Southmore's 10 that talks about all that, and they're kind of, he describes them as kind of a Bigfoot human hybrid, and he claims that back in the 30s, before it became the national park, that some of his relatives were hired to go in there and clear these things out. Yeah. So again, who knows? It's interesting to think about either way.
That is absolutely terrifying, is it? To think that
it is,
because well, we don't even have to go there. I think as own minds take us there without even saying it. Why would they be taking people?
Yeah.
And is there many stories then, Steve, where well, just to stay with Dennis Martin for a minute, I'm assuming if his dad's got his eyes on the bush where Dennis has hidden, because as a responsible parent, he would have been watching it, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
He'd have heard a scream, wouldn't he? He'd have heard anyone scream, surely. Whatever took him must have been silent.
It had to be swift and then silent, or maybe it didn't, like snatch him. Maybe it just like, come with me, little boy, and he went willingly. Who knows?
Yeah. No, it's frightening. But the thought of wild men, I've got a friend who's in UK, who's from Oklahoma. He's been in UK 35 years. And he's going to do a few short stories of his own life with us. And he was telling us that he lived on a remote farm in Oklahoma. And out in the middle of nowhere, he says, 2-mile dirt track road to get to where we lived. We used to catch catfish and just basically live off the land. And he said he went out into the woodland and forest when he was a young boy, and there were a cabin that had fell down, just it just decayed and just fell down. He said he lifted a trapdoor. There were a cellar, and there were a caveman looking up at him. He described it as looking like a Neanderthal man.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind sharing this because I know Rex is going to share it, but he'll do it a lot better than me. And he's stayed with him all his life. I think he's about 64, 65 now. And he's got this story. So when you talk about wild men, living in the woods and people going in to eradicate them, to clear them out. We're not just talking about transient people living in shelters, are we? We're talking about something that's forging an existence in that woodland. And do you think it's the encroachment of our population as we get closer into these woodlands and these forest areas that's causing the disappearances, or does it go back hundreds of years?
I think it goes back farther than that, but I've had people say, well, you couldn't live in the woods, but you absolutely could if you know what you're doing. I mean, the indigenous people did it for millennia. And if you've got, food, water, shelter, just the rudiments, you can survive. I always point to Eric Rudolph, who was the Olympic Park bomber here in the U.S. When he was on the top of the FBI's most wanted list, he hid out in Nantahala National Forest, which is very close to the Smokies there. And he stayed hidden for 5 years. And this was somebody with just minimal survival skills. Yeah. Now, I think he may have had some help from sympathetic people, but it is possible. And again, it's one of those things you can't say or not say. But there are stories in a lot of these places where the national parks are of there being feral humans in there, or even cannibal human hybrid type things, and that's scary. If they're some of the native tribes have stories of bone eaters and things like that, which are cannibalistic creatures. They're not cannibal if they're not human, but they eat people anyway, whatever they are.
Have you got a particular account that you could share with us? Is there anything that stands out there? So I've never heard of it.
I've got some stories on my Tales Untold channel. Now that's immersive storytelling over there. I have some stories about ferals in the Smokies, in southeastern Kentucky, and California, Virginia, West Virginia, places like that. Now those are based on true stories, but there are accounts out there, and that's one of those things. It's like people say, well, the park rangers would know about it. Well, in some cases they do. I've heard stories, not first person, but a park ranger's telling people, be careful because there's people out there, much like Dwight McCarter said, there's wild men. And he kind of played it off as just like, there are people that want to be away from society and live off grid. But I think it's much more than that. But you think about where these places are, say the Smokies in particular, most visited national park in the country, 12 billion plus visitors a year. All those little towns around there, Gatlinburg, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, tourism is king. That's what drives those places. If you didn't have the national park, you'd kill
the
towns, and all those people would be out of jobs. And so if you want people to visit your national park, you're not going to say, hey, come and visit us here in the Smokies, but keep an eye on the people in your group, because there's people, humanoids in the woods that will eat you. So I can see it's kind of like if you've ever seen the movie Jaws, where the mayor wanted to keep the shark attacks quiet for that weekend because tourism, people wouldn't come there if they thought they were going to get eaten by a shark. Same principle.
Are there any particular hot spots where this happens? Obviously, we all reports that you've taken certain locations must keep showing up. You say Appalachian Trail, but I'm assuming that's a huge expanse. Is there any little zones within the trail that are more prolific?
Appalachian Trail, it's over 2,000 miles. It runs from Georgia to Maine. And depending on who you talk to, some people claims it goes even farther than that it goes under the ocean, and then there's parts of it in Ireland and things, so do continental drift and things like that, Pangea. But the trail itself, the known trail, goes from Georgia to Maine and vice versa, and a lot of those little places, that you pass through, there are stories. The Cherokee National Forest, the Washington National Forest, Jefferson National Forest, and that's just in the southern part of it. Everywhere it goes through the Bennington Triangle, it goes near there. That's here in New England. All kinds of stories, not only the creatures and things, but UFOs and ghosts and a little bit of everything. And I don't know if it's so much of it follows the trail like a ley line, or if it's just strange things in the woods. That's the title of one of my books. But that's just, and I think it's something about the isolation of the woods too. And if you were something of a paranormal nature, what better place just to hang out and keep to yourself? I mean, strange things happen in the cities too. There's people that have disappeared from downtown in places, so it doesn't just happen in the woods.
No. What do you think? There's a cover up by the authorities. Do you think they know what it is, even if we're just surmising what these things could be?
Yeah, I think they would have to some degree.
Yeah.
And there's that theory. The containment theory is that one where the national parks are set aside to keep these creatures or whatever they are in there, and then occasionally they have the ability, they let them feed just to keep them happy and to keep them from coming out of the national parks, I guess, and running wild everywhere else. Yeah, that's just a crazy theory, but who knows? And also there's, other stuff. In all these missing person cases that are strange. Now, not all of them aren't strange. A lot of people go missing due to being underprepared, ill-equipped, or overconfident. It'll never happen to me until it does. But there are ones that have just no scientific explanation, where they just literally disappeared, no trace. A lot of people point to animal predation and things like that.
I was just coming to that. Yeah.
But if a big cat or a bear or something like that attacks you, there's going to be forensic evidence. There's going to be bodily fluids. It's not, a bear's not going to eat your belt buckle or your boots or things like that. But literally where the footprints end and then there's nothing. There's something to some of these cases. And I've had people ask me, is it UFOs and aliens? Is it Bigfoot? Is it the Glimmer Man? Is it Dog Man? Is it our government or some other government? Is it deep underground military bases? Is it something in the cave system? The short answer, yes, to all those, but I don't know which one. It seems different every certain time or any particular time. But there's something definitely that we don't understand afoot in some of these, and it could be any of those things or all those things.
Yeah. So if we stayed with Bigfoot for a minute, do you think these creatures are flesh and blood, or do you think there's something else, or flesh and blood with just some kind of incredible abilities that we just can't understand?
Yeah, I've heard that said. I know late comedian Bigfoot is blurry, and that was meant to be a joke, but I think there may be some truism in that maybe it's able to vibrate at a different frequency, and then it uses that as camouflage.
Yeah. I mean, jumping back to when you were a young boy, how does something manage to manage to break branches, create heavy footfall, and remain invisible? That's just,
that's
off the scale of normal, isn't it?
I think, Paul, that points towards something that's either interdimensional or extra dimensional, that has abilities that we don't have, or that we're not even aware of. But there's, again, just because science can't explain it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, I don't need to believe in the theory of gravity to know that I'll fall down the stairs, that sort of thing.
No. So what do you think? And I'm obviously, I don't think you're going to say I believe it's this, but what do you think's responsible for? Do you think there's a paranormal element to some of the missing people?
Some of the missing, definitely there are not as many as some people think. Like I said, being ill-equipped and overconfident is some of the worst things, and that can happen to anybody. But there are some, like I said, where there's no trace of anything. Literally, the footprints just stop.
Yeah,
something took those people, and I don't think it's a big animal. I've seen pictures, forensic photos of a big cat and bear attacks and things like that. The ground cover is a mess. There's usually bones or shredded clothing or something around. You can tell something happened to this person. And even some animals will cache their kills either in the ground or up in a tree and things like that. But again, no animal is that fastidious that it can clean up every single thing and leave no trace and sweep the leaves back over. You know, there's going to be.
It doesn't fit with the people who are trying to solve this who've got no interest in, well, not interest, but no. They wouldn't even venture to step in the territory that you're talking about. So it just doesn't fit with them, does it? They don't even want to entertain it or talk about it. Have you had people in authority, veterinary people, police officers, rangers, talk to you and give you their views on what this might be?
I have, but sadly off the record. But that's understandable. People want to keep their jobs and not end up being committed. But I've had park rangers and law enforcement officers and people like that say, there's something out there. I don't care what anybody says. There's things that can't explain. There are things out there that will get you and either eat you or take you or do something with you. And they don't know what it is.
Do you think these things, Steve, are playing with us in a way? Because I've sort of read and heard on podcasts people talking about this, where an area has been searched extensively more than once, and then the missing person's been found, usually deceased, in the area that's been
right
searched.
there. Sometimes just a few feet off the trail in a place that's been searched multiple times. That sounds like something is taunting us, whatever this is that takes people, even if it's a human element. But again, I don't consider it necessarily human to have that speed and that precision to do things in the way that some of these cases are. And it boggles the mind. You get into some of these cases, like I was talking about here in the Bridgewater Triangle in my area of New England. There's stories going back to, there's a lot of people missing in that area. There's a story about a creature up there. The stagecoach had gotten stuck and they were trying to get it out of the mud. A big hairy creature came out of the woods, looked in the window, screamed at the people and ran away. Same area, the Algonquin Indians and Native Americans, they have a story about a creature that looks like a rock that can disguise itself as a rock, and you try to cross it or happen by it, it can take you inside, get whatever nourishment it gets out of you, your life essence, and then spits you out. Well, there are cases.
Obviously, spits you out dead.
Yeah. There in the Bennington Triangle, there was somebody that was found that looked like they'd been crushed to death, but nothing there to have crushed them. So maybe, Bigfoot squeezed them to death or something like that, or this rock creature. And again, there have been a lot of people that have gone missing that have been found in a boulder field. There's not a lot of places to hide something in a boulder field, but they find them in a boulder field that's already been searched. And again, I've even heard it described as they look like they had fallen from a considerable height when there's no height to fall from. Well, if you went inside this rock creature, were crushed to death, and it spit you out where there's nothing to fall from, it could look like that. Again, we're getting into some deep rabbit holes here, some strange territory, but that's what it takes to look at some of these cases.
But when you hear the stories that people talk about, we had a guy on live stream. I think we've had him on. Les will correct me if we didn't, but I talked to him extensively, and academically trained man, and he sat behind a rock face at, I think it was Loch Lomond, and him and his partner are sat on a seat just with the back, and people will have heard me say this, and a hand came out through the rock face and touched his partner's hip, and she felt it and he saw it. Now that's not possible, Steve. Let's face it,
it's not. I've heard stories similar to that, where there are things that again, it defies any logic or explanation, but that's our logic and explanation. It doesn't have to play by our rules.
So when you're saying things like that, we're getting into kind of deep rabbit holes here and dark places. We really are. But let's face it, everything that you talk about and write about, and myself included, they are dark, deep, strange, and unusual things. What is your take on some of the lesser known cryptid type creatures that have been reported, and is there anything new?
Well, nothing new really that I've heard of. Now there's things, like the rake, and Dogman has really come to the fore recently in the past decade or so. I'm sure you know about that. But again, there's stories out there like the place that you talked about, what was it, the village, that Hudman Town or whatever,
which we've kind of featured loads of in, there we go, Wolflands.
Yeah, that's so telling that just from the name of the place, that implies that there's been something there as long as that place has been named that. So which could be
well for the people, Steve, that don't know, and you brought the name up, Hundmanby, Hund meaning hound, and if you go back in time, it was named Farmstead of the Hound Man. And people who put a level playing field on this and not took it into the paranormal realms have said it's suspected that the king kept his hounds there. But there's no evidence, there's no reference that the king ever kept his hounds there. And 2 miles away from Hundmanby, you've got Flixton. And in that first book, the first Truth Proof book, has got loads of accounts of the Flixton werewolf. This bipedal creature that is said to haunt and roam these lowlands of Flixton, 2 miles away from a place that were called Farmstead of the Hound Man.
Yeah,
so it kind of makes you roll your eyes.
Yeah, it's too accurate to be coincidental, I think.
Absolutely. So when I touched on are there any new cryptid type creatures that people have talked about? I'm thinking tulpas. Are we creating any of this?
Yeah, I've wondered about that. But I've heard people say, the opposite of that. If thinking about something would bring it to the fore, how come we're not saturated with sightings of the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and things like that? But we are. There's cases I've covered on the paranormal side where children remember seeing things in their home, Disney characters and things like that came out of the wall and did things. So, and again, I think that's intent. If you're trying to summon it, or if you're just thinking about it, there's a difference.
Yeah. But, and do you think, like you touched on the Ouija board earlier, and we imagine people sat around it, and it's all intent, isn't it? It's all directional, thought direction, and we're believing something could happen. Do you think that we could do that? We wouldn't necessarily need a Ouija board. We could do it with anything.
I think so, and that would, into pendulums and psychometry and things like that it's an innate ability that we have, and that's a tool that we manifest it through. But again, I think it's something that's been educated out of us, and it was probably more prevalent. But people were, I feel, years ago more in touch with their spiritual side and their natural sides. And again, with all the chemicals that we ingest in our food and water and things, there's no wonder that we've been dumbed down to
absolutely
not have the same beliefs and stuff that got us through. I mean, all those people from centuries ago, they got by somehow. So,
yeah. Do you think then, Steve, our diet to some degree, if we had a frugal diet and I don't know, just fresh homegrown produce, that we would somehow become more in touch with the phenomena? Is that too?
I think so. I think if you take care of your, I believe man is a trifold being, body, mind, and spirit, and that if you have something wrong in one of those areas, it can affect other areas, if not the whole area. So yeah, eating properly, taking care of yourself, getting plenty of sleep, and keeping your mind clear and active, and try to accentuate the positive, as that old song goes. You can draw dark things to you if that's all you sit around and think about, and likewise you can bring joy to yourself.
It's kind of like attracts like. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
just before I get Les on, I'm just having a quick look here with just a few more names. Pendle Hill, UFOs, Fire Spirit, Mark McClinchley, Blue Shift, Deb Shaw. I think my daughter's in Laura. I saw Laura's name. Use All. Dogman TP Hunting. We've said that. I think that's a big word name that. We should just call you Phil. Yeah, hiya, Dad. Yeah, hi, Laura. So I'm going to bring Les in. And are you okay? Do you need a break at all,
Yeah,
Steve?
let me take a little break. I've been sitting here working on this.
And
I've got a hot and a cold coffee. I need to return that to the earth.
Well, we'll leave it open. Just sort of silence your mic if you want for a moment. I'll have a natter to Les and see you in a minute. Yep. All good. So
yeah, we've got some good questions in, Paul. We'll ask those when Steve comes back online. And we've got to thank Lee Roscoe for a great big donation tonight to the channel.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Lee. And he says, this is for Truth Proof tech side of things.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I'll tell you something, Lee, and that is nothing to do with what Les has just said, because I know how much you spend time in the field and things, and you might not want to sit here for 2 hours, but you ought to come and share a few thoughts with us one Sunday. And I'll throw it out there again, anybody else that's got something interesting that they want to contribute and get challenged a little bit with people in chat, because I love Sundays, and we've started throwing these, I don't know whatever day. If we don't do a short, we've done odd one on a Tuesday, and it's great. It's great having interaction with you guys. I see we've got Alison in. Thanks, Alison. Alison's been busy at work today.
Just for the people who are new to the channel, Paul, can you just give us some info on some of the merchandise, books, DVDs they can buy and where they can buy it?
I certainly can. 1 second. We've got Jim Ellis and we've got Uzzle Art. Happy birthday, Les. They've not forgot you, Les. They're not like me.
Thank you
straight
very much.
from one ear and out the other. Ginge. Yeah, so we put this picture up tonight, Wolflands, and obviously that's the DVD. The film that myself and Les made, and broken record here, guys, but why not? We've got to promote ourselves a bit. If you want to buy the hard copy of that DVD, go to the website on the link that Les has just thrown up. If you want to look at it via Amazon Prime, have a look at it there as well. And honestly, it's well worth your viewing. I say every time, but I just think it's an absolutely amazing film. I'm proud to have made it. And the books, likewise, truthproof.uk, or download the Kindle versions. I'll have to get them back up as paperbacks on Amazon as well. I keep saying I'm going to do that. So I'll have to do that. And I've been out of Truth Proof 1 now for 3 months. And it's not a money thing. I've just not got round to it. But however, somebody ordered one today, and I can't believe how they ordered it. I don't know. So please, if you're watching this, don't order one, because I've only got probably 2 left. So I've put an order in today for Truth Proof 1, which I should have some back end of next week, because it kind of shocked me when an order came through. So yeah, the books are there. And go on, Les.
Yeah, and just to pick up on the truthproof.uk website, there is now nearly 250 reports on there. And if you want to join into Sunday evening show, the Truth Proof Interactive, then we will be bringing up one of those cases, what's mentioned in there. And it's a great case, actually. It's a sighting, and it's from a small village on the Yorkshire Wolds. Yeah,
that's all we're going to say, guys. Not tonight. We'll probably not name the village even on Sunday, because we're going to keep nature of this person's identity private, and his place of work kind of thing. But it's a great sighting, and it's one of them where you heard Steve earlier talk about seeing that, being chased by this unseen entity as a little boy. Then he goes back when he's 15 years old, and somehow it evokes it again. Well, it's one of them. We aren't going into too much detail and spoiling for Sunday. This guy ends up talking about something for about 3 hours to someone, unexplained phenomena, and then experiences it that night. Is this what we're dealing with? All seeing and all knowing, and just switching on whenever we want. It fascinates me, absolutely does. So it's a great account, Les, and we'll share that. What's our Laura saying? I'm after a new Wolfland cup. Oh, are you? Okay, Laura, we'll sort that. Love.
Okay, and just another item to bring up, and we had Martin Abbas on the show, and you did the paranormal phenomena, stratification, triangulation tool.
Right.
So I'll put some links in tonight's show for the form that you can fill in, and then obviously you can send that to an email address, which will be on there as well. So yeah, that's gathering information on all of your experiences, what you thought your experiences, and what effects it had on you. Isn't that right, Paul?
Absolutely, and it's a totally safe email address where it'll be going. Your information's safe. If you never want it shared with anybody, that's fine by us. And the idea is to gather this information. So what we've got with 227 people in chat, we don't want 227 tomorrow morning. But if you had an experience and you want to go to the truthproof.uk website and download or fill in the forms that myself and Martin have created for this stratification tool, and we just want to analyze this data, but obviously we need a bank of data to see if there's any similarities. Let's assume that it's a cryptid report and you've ticked a box that just keeps highlighting within that report. Obviously we can see patterns forming, so that's the whole idea of it. And Martin's worked hard on it. I have. And I'm looking forward to seeing the results, but we need your participation. If you're happy for the information to be shared and not your name, we'd do that. If you want to share it, I mean, Martin's there. We need Martin back on, really, and we'll go through this again one Sunday. But I'll speak to him next day or so, and we'll kick a few ideas.
I think you'll have to come up with a shorter acronym name for it, Paul.
Yeah, well, yeah. What's he doing? Come on. It's like
have you got your little doggy? Oh, there he is.
He's like a human gazelle. He's absolutely.
He's coming to have a look.
He's going to get on mic. He's listening to the song, Bob. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've just come back into the stream, we are just waiting for Steve Stockton to come back on. He's probably just having a drink or two. And
it's fine.
Drinks, I reckon. Fine. Yeah.
And we'll cut it straight away as soon as Steve comes back. Get Bob, go and sit down. This week we've been on cliff tops. We talked about the thick fog, and I mean absolutely horrendous. So when we're driving down Cliff Lane, you're going at 0 mile an hour because you can't see. Well, you're on road, but you're very close to either side of it. It's a single track road. So we got up there. And if I'm repeating myself, people, I do apologise, but we got up there, I think it was Saturday night. And I don't normally go Saturdays, but as I say, Jenny and Heidi were here, and we've had Sarah and Carly here earlier in the week, which were great. And we went up there. You'd think that nothing was going to happen because what's he doing? No, it's burrowing. You think nothing's going to happen because obviously it's thick with fog. You can probably see 10, 15 feet in front of you at most. You can't, no trace of the moon, no trace of Flamborough Lighthouse. And bearing in mind, it doesn't sweep round now with a full beam like it used to do. You've just got this flicker. Right? Why am I saying that? Because there's nothing penetrating the fog. Yet we've got little flashes of light around us. And I don't mean like it's just flashing like a camera flash, but they're there. There's little flashes of light in this mist, in this fog, all around us, and which you shouldn't see.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're seeing little flashes of light through fog, which is pretty thick.
Through fog. It was with us. It was around us, Les.
Yeah. How does it permeate itself through the fog? That's the question.
Well, I'm trying to think who was there. There were Ian, Elaine.
Yeah.
I think there was about 8 people there. The only person that didn't see it, I think, and he'll correct me, is she'll correct me, is Elaine. I don't think she saw these flashes, but it were really, everybody saw them, and it weren't kind of like catching on and, I've got to say I've seen it. People were commenting as it was happening. So I haven't got a clue how that happens. We were up there last night in the rain and everything, and nothing, just absolutely flat, just nothing. But I considered that a bit of a result. Do you know what I mean? I were hoping it were going to be foggy again because I were going to set a camera up and see if we could actually catch it.
Right, I think we've got Steve back now, so we'll bring him back on. And I've probably got a few questions.
Look,
welcome back, Steve.
before we go to questions, we've got a little boy on.
Hey,
as well.
I've got a guest
yeah.
with me here for just a moment. He's just waking up, so he'll need to be fed and diapered here shortly. But I thought I'd bring him on and show him up. So he's not going to be real happy right now.
No,
Let me introduce to you Holden Chandler Stockton. He was born September 5th at 4:31 p.m. Eastern Time. Worcester, Massachusetts. Weighs 7 pounds 3 ounces, 19.5 inches at birth. And in about an hour, a little less than an hour and a half, he'll be 3 weeks old.
Nice,
This is my son. Look at all that hair.
To sleep. Yeah. Look at all the hair.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to bring him on to say hi to everybody. But he's got beautiful little eyes, but he's not going to open them right now. Let me go pass him back to Mama real quick. I just want him to say hi to everybody.
Thank you, Steve, and I'm sure everyone
right
in chat. You can't do anything but smile, and it makes your heart feel good. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Take me off camera for just a minute, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, all good. Right, okay, take him off camera, Les. There we go. Well, that's good. That's the first for and Fred Flintstone says congratulations, blessed, 2 great guys tonight, and he's an all-round good guy, Steve. So that little boy's going to grow up in good company, isn't he? And
definitely, yeah.
So the flashes of light. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? Because you go up there, you're thinking we want a clear sky, we want to see something, we want to experience something. I were hoping it were going to be misty again and foggy, because. It were a new one for me, and I don't know about people in chat whether you've experienced anything like that before. We didn't imagine it, and right, what's that, Dave Barker? That's the meaning of it all, Steve. It certainly is, mate. Yeah, Jan and Andrew. There's another one. Yeah,
I'll just deviate a little bit and bring this on from Joel. Did you get the pictures Paul I sent? Was tracking deer, found big cat prints.
I don't think I have, Joel. I wonder, where did you send them? And if people know me and phones, if you've sent them to my phone, I'm pretty useless. But I'll have a look, mate. I'll have a look for you. Thank you. And there's Joel, who I think he's now in. South Yorkshire. I'm not certain, but he used to be in East Yorkshire. So good to see you, mate. Thank you. And we'll have Steve back. Right. You're right, Paul. I was the only one who didn't see the flashes. Yeah, but that's just the way it is, I suppose, Elaine, but they were definitely there. And I don't know, maybe next time. But I know you probably don't want to come up. But it were good. It were good. And we'll have Steve back in a minute. Then any questions for me, Les? Is it out there for me?
Let's have a look. There was one asking for money. I don't know who that was.
All right.
I don't know if only. No, I'm not seeing anything at the moment.
229 in chat. Well, let's just reiterate what Les said earlier. If you're in chat and you've not subscribed to Truth Proof, consider it, because it just, like I always say on these shorts, it just gives us incentive. Did anybody see the one that we put up about the deer on Tuesday? The animals that I've been finding along the coast and in an area of Danes Dyke. I've done a little follow up on that last few days, and I've got a feeling, people. Well, not a feeling. I'm certain it's. Although we're a channel that looks into unexplained phenomena, I'm not so sure that this is unexplained phenomena in the true sense. It's unexplained, but I think it's something to do with people rather than some creature or some weird happenings. Do you know what I mean? I think that's more likely to be closer to the truth, unlike the 2017, 18 and 19 sheep fatalities. That were strange. This looks like there's people involved, which is quite frightening, because I'm frequenting these areas and I'm highlighting it, but I'm not going to stop highlighting it. I'll keep doing it. And that's all we do. Right. So what we got here then?
Tony World. Yeah. Go on. I live next to the sea in the fog is spooky. The old saying here is to look out for the thieves in the fog.
Thieves in the fog. Well, it's an ideal time, isn't it, if you're going to do out, Tony? But I talked to Steve earlier and said, has he had any reports of any kind of new cryptids? And that there'll be like tongue in cheek here because we heard that sound on cliff tops. I don't know how long since now. Martin will tell us probably, or Ian, but it's probably 8 weeks ago. And as it started up, it sounded like it could have been an absolutely huge frog or toad. And then it became almost like, as Ian put it, you know, the curling stones clacking together. And we were hearing that. Once again, there's not one person hearing it. And it's like catching on and people are thinking, oh, I might have heard something. We all heard it. And what's interesting there, and we'll come to that question in a minute because I know Steve's not back yet. What's interesting there is that when we got talking about it, that we then had conversations with Chris Meek in Scotland, and he goes to Ben MacDo and he hears something, and he likened it to a huge frog. You know, and you think to yourself, is this catching? What's happening here? And what we didn't say, Les, is that, we might have done, but Chris has heard the same sound now in his hallway at home.
Really?
Really, yeah. So have we got something that akin to the hitchhiker effect here? You know, I don't know. So Paranormal Coffee Lounge, Les, what we got here?
Foggy coming back from Scarborough last week really added to the eeriness of it, which it does, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. Do you know, apologies, Terry, Paranormal Coffee Lounge, I should know. Yes, because Terry was on the cliff tops with us, and nobody's suggesting things for him. Nobody's putting the unexplained phenomena onto Terry. He's got a vested interest in ghostly things. He's probably on the same page as you here, Les. Mm-hmm. But he's stood looking out to sea. And we've done this last week, but I'm sure there'll be people in who've not heard this, and he can verify it. And below him, below the 200 to 300 foot cliffs, which are sheer, there's a flash of light. There's just not. It's just not happening, is it? It's not possible. There's nobody got a camera flash. We're not talking out at sea. It was just below him. Just put up in chat, Terry. Do you think it was 6 or 8 foot below you? It's there's nobody down on the beach either. You can't get down there. We aren't going down on ropes. Yeah. So
impossible, isn't it? It's impossible to climb down there. Yeah.
So just fire. What's this question? Right. Let's have a look. I see one here. I can read it if you want, Les.
Read it out. I can't find it. Which one you're talking about? Can you put it on?
I will do. One sec. Yeah. Let's have a look. Question. It's from TP Hunting. Have you, Paul? Have you seen? I wish I could pronounce it. Sanguinated. I know it's lack of blood. Exsanguinated, if I'm saying it wrong. Animals or body parts in the areas. 2017, Phil. 18 and 19. The animals that I were finding, no traces of blood. No traces of blood. Seriously, which I found that fascinating. In itself, we know it's macabre, but we're talking about sheep, which are a dirty white colour. They're not pure white as you see them on, on cartoons and things. But by the same token, with the injuries that they'd sustained, you would have expected to see a lot of blood, but there were none. And the things that were cut from these animals, the parts that were cut, the areas, no blood. We were talking about people. I'm not labeling the missing people into what I'm saying there, but let's just go to it. We're talking about people being found in areas that had previously been searched. That Steve touched on it. So all the rangers and the police forces and everybody's searching these areas and there's nothing, and then they're finding them. Well, one morning, I'm hoping I can get this out before Steve comes back. One morning, and it was 2018, the farmer who I was working with closely when these animals were going missing, he'd spray each sheep with a number. We'll call this 35. And he told me that one had gone missing. And it weren't a lamb as such. It was still call it a lamb, but it weren't a fully grown ewe or ram. And he said it had gone missing. He'd searched area, he'd looked for it, and it just disappeared. He assumed a fox or some animal had taken it. And I ended up on the fields a few days later, early morning, did my grid search of the fields, went into the woodland, came back, same fields, didn't come back a different route. And this field was split by a 3-bar fence and a big gate. And as I shut the gate, I got Mary's little dog, not Bobby. Well, this one's Mary's as well, but I didn't have this one, the train tracker. So I went through the gate, and as I shut the gate, I looked back. And as I looked back, I can see, I knew it was a sheep, about as big as a Labrador, just laid in grass. Weren't there when I went that morning. It weren't there at 4:30 in the morning. And this is summertime. It's not dark. Do you know what I mean? It's just getting light. So I walked up to this animal. It's been missing. I'm putting myself on the spot here, but it's been missing about 3 or 4 days. It was cold, but it looked like it had not been dead long. There's no bloating. There's nothing. And we'll call it number 35. It's the one that's gone missing days before. How does that happen? Front left leg missing, ears removed, eyes, no blood. And I rang him up, and I asked him what number sheep it were that had gone missing, and I said, it's here. I said, it can't be, it's impossible. I said, it's here. I said, I've literally just shut the gate, but it weren't here at 4:30 in the morning. So how does that work? And wow. This guy, I became very good friends with him, so I've loads and loads of respect for this man. But he weren't into the unexplained, apart from what were happening was strange. But he just said, well, a fox must have brought it back. Are you going to tell me something, Les? Sorry, I thought you were going to say something then. Sorry. He said, well, a fox must have brought it back. Well, I'm hoping Steve comes back.
No, I'm just saying, I'll just get in there quick. Matthew Cook, Truth Proof, has made East Yorkshire internationally known, and buzz on that one fact alone.
Yeah, well, do you know something, Matthew? I think I must be doing tourist trade a bit of good, because there's been justice saved by the bell. We are here, Steve. We must be doing tourist trade a bit of good, because there's people coming up to East Yorkshire and around the cliff tops, and they're not just coming to look at the seabirds. They're coming to see whether they can see or experience the unexplained. And we'll get a thumbs up from Steve when he's ready. Yeah, we're good to go. So thank you, Steve.
No, thanks for indulging me there. I had to get him all set up. He started crying, so I needed a diaper and a bottle. So Mom changed the diaper, and I made the bottle. I took the easy way out. So
brilliant. Thank you.
He's resting comfortably now. But thank you for letting him be the first infant guest you've had on the show. I appreciate it.
Fabulous.
Well, that's brilliant. That's the first for Truth Proof, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, it is. July 26th for the that Martin's just said for the sounds. Thank you, Martin. Okay, Les, we've got some questions for Steve.
Yes, and let's have a look. Right, Lee Roscoe, one of our regular people in the chat and supporters. Question: what does Steve think about the forest and cube boxes seen? Do you know anything about cube boxes seen in the forest, Steve?
I've heard of the staircases and things seen out there, and I've heard of some concrete structures and things. I had one lady and her father that had gone missing, and she left him next to some concrete structure in the woods that she was unable to find. But I've heard of things in the woods that show up and then just aren't there anymore. And I don't know if that points to some kind of military thing, some kind of black ops stuff, or if it's something of alien origin, all the above. I don't know. I've heard of them, and it's the only opinion I have is that I tend to believe that people have seen and encountered strange things out there.
Yeah, I think it'd probably be safe to say, Steve, that if you're seeing concrete or people are seeing concrete, it's got to point to man-made, surely.
It points to man-made, or it's some sort of a projected illusion like Project Bluebeam or something like that. Where, who knows, where they can beam it straight into your head and make you see anything you want to see. I know at some of the stories I heard from Skinwalker Ranch, the original family there that had problems, a lady was looking out her kitchen window one morning, saw what she described as a portal open up. A dog man came stomping out, portal closed back. Another time it opened up, and she's observed a man sitting at a desk doing something. He looked up at her, annoyed, did something, and the portal closed. So who knows? What is that? What's going on there? Is that military industrial complex? Is that black ops? Is that pure hallucination? Who knows? But there's some strange things out there, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Les. One totally conflicting though, isn't it? What we're seeing there. You're talking about something like a cryptid, a dog man, and then you're talking about somebody sat at a desk.
Somebody at a desk. Yeah, it's so bizarre.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Dragon
that's
Ball.
another place where they've seen a lot of strange things is in that area, the Uinta Basin there. Their cows kept going missing. And then one day it had snowed, and the guy thought, well, this way it'll be easy to track the cows. Well, they tracked them right up to where the footprints stopped in the snow.
Yeah.
No cow, nothing in sight. But above, he noticed there were tree limbs broken and stuff, 20, 30 feet up, like something took the cow up. So that falls into the cattle mutilations and abductions.
UFO related, yeah.
Okay, I'll go to the
don't know if my childhood home was on any ley lines. That's more of a British concept, I think. I'm sure there's places like that here in the U.S. They just call it by a different name. But there are power spots like a few years ago, I was living just outside of Portland, Oregon, and I spoke at a UFO conference in San Francisco, and I made the drive down the Interstate 5 there, and you can track that Interstate 5, all the places that goes through, like leaving out of Portland, you go through a place where the Oregon vortex that they talk about. It goes right past Mount Shasta. All kinds of weird stuff happens. Then into San Francisco, farther down into Southern California. So things seem to follow along certain paths. And I don't know if the highways there, if that's just a coincidence or who knows. Eisenhower was the one that started the interstate system. And he's also the one, if you listen to his family member, I think it's his granddaughter, Magdalena Eisenhower, she's a friend of mine. She claims that there was an open secret in the family that they made a deal with extraterrestrials. There was a meeting that Ike was at, Eisenhower, Aleister Crowley, Hitler, and Winston Churchill, I think, that took place at night where they made a treaty with the aliens in exchange for technology. And treaty, I find that word interesting. Wouldn't be just an exchange. We'll give you humans for technology, but a treaty is something you sign to keep something from obliterating, like a peace treaty. So, have you ever had her on?
I haven't. I'd like to. I think I emailed her actually a couple of years ago.
Fascinating lady.
Yeah, Is it Madeleine? They call her.
Yeah.
I'd like to speak with her. Just before, let's go to the next question. Why? I know you've not got an answer to it, but I'm asking myself. Why would they have to? Why would someone superior intelligence have to sign a treaty with us? Why?
Yeah, that wouldn't necessarily make sense, would it? But
no, to me it wouldn't.
Unless there's more to it than we know of, stuff that we don't know about. Do we have something that we could destroy these things with if we wanted to? Like some of those old science fiction movies where the common cold was deadly to them. So who knows? I mean, I think there's a point there where it kind of the lines blend together and science fiction becomes science fact.
Yeah.
Same with conspiracy. Conspiracy theory becomes conspiracy fact at some point.
Yeah.
Just, evidence.
Okay. Fred Flintstone. Hello, Steve. Do you think the Fae phenomena exists all over the world? Antarctica, for example?
I don't know of any reports of anything necessarily Fae related in Antarctica, but I have read of some strange things there. You have there's been disappearances there. There's been, and particularly it's not in Antarctica, but Siberia and places like that, where there's not many living things. There have been cases of things, like I can't think of the forest where some kind of explosion leveled millions of trees, and then
Tunguska.
And then there was another one, Dyatlov Pass. Heard of that one, where the people were found. It looked like something had just destroyed those people, and some kind of cryptid creature, maybe. Who knows?
They claimed they'd caught something on a photograph, didn't they? On their cameras. I don't know whether it were real or fake, but they'd caught a figure on the photo in the photographs. The Dyatlov Pass incident, it fascinates me.
Yeah, that's one of those. There are no answers, but there's so many different ways to think about it and ways to approach it. And so I think that's what a lot of these require. It's going to take thinking outside scientific box to step back and view it from 30,000 feet and say, well, what's the old Sherlock Holmes thing that whenever you eliminate the
If
impossible,
you eliminate
whatever's
all the
left, no
oh,
matter
yeah,
how improbable is the correct answer.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve. John Paul Body. Hi, Paul. Hi, Steve. What do you think about the two worlds of realities colliding with each other? Maybe fae folk or are native to the other reality?
That's a possibility. What if
Yeah.
when we encounter them on some level in some reality, they're encountering us? Like, the fae people are talking. Well, I was out picking berries and I saw this human all of a sudden just appear out of nowhere, and I don't know what he wanted, and it scared the pants off of him. It could go both ways if you look at it from their perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've
And are
heard
you
it
saying,
described that way. I've heard that dimensions are like, say, a silk fabric, that if you get them close enough, kind of press them together, you can see through both sides, and then they pull apart. And I had a lady that had an experience once where she was someplace that didn't exist for a brief time, and then she was back, and she described it like that, as being like, sometimes when the realities blend, you can be both places, and then it pulls back apart. The veil that they talk about, and people that talk about that have said that the veil is getting thinner. It's before it was always this time of year, around Samhain and things like that. The Celtics and Druids and people like that talked about the veil getting thinner. But people that I know that are into Wicca and things like that, they say that it's getting thinner all the time now, that it's not, it's a constant thing, and that we're going to start seeing more cryptids and strange things. And that's been my experience too. I don't know if we're more aware, the world's been made a smaller place because of the internet, and people are more likely to share their experiences.
I was just going to ask you that.
Where it's just, they're coming more to the fore, or if they're happening more often, or both. I think it's both.
Do you think, Steve, any of this is happening, and we're seeing more frequencies of these events, like you just said? Is it to do with magnetic polar shifts, do you think?
I think that could have something to do with it. And also, I've heard a lot of theories about this put forth in all seriousness, that something they're doing at CERN is developing things in the reality and in our physical world. Again, I don't know. I don't really know enough about it to have an opinion on it, but the things I've seen are point towards something strange.
Yeah, and we seem to be moving to a different period in the world, don't we? So it's it's fascinating. But as you say, with CERN, a totally man-made thing, quantum physics and what have you, and looking for black holes. Who knows what portals we may open up unwittingly.
And man-made, I think that could be, debatable. If we can manufacture something, how do we know that other species, if they're extraterrestrials, or do they have the ability to do that as well? I would think so. If they can manufacture these intergalactic craft and things like that, they've got to have some high tech, or, as I heard it put forth, that those don't even exist. They're just what they're projected, and that's what you see and perceive it as. That it's not even physical craft. It's all in here.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways that it's a Pandora's box of thought and ideas and stuff. And some of those rabbit holes, once you go down, it's hard to get back out of there.
Well, it is a rabbit hole, isn't it? And do you think that some of these, let's push it a little bit further, do you think some of these craft that people see in the air, UFOs, for want of a better description, do you think these are projected? Do you think these are projections, Steve?
I think it's some of both. I think some of the craft are physical, and some of them are imaged, or how you want to look at it. And you look at Project Bluebeam and things like that. But then you also look at Bob Lazar and some of that, those reports of actual physical craft. And the most impressive UFO incident I ever had was when I lived in Las Vegas. I worked at one of the casinos, and I was taking an employee of mine home. It's about 2:00 in the morning, and down past the south end of the strip, there was a craft hovering over a power substation. It was the size of a football field at least. It was jet black. There were no lights. It made no noise, but it blotted out the night sky. It was blacker than black, just hovering over this substation, power substation. And the person that I was taking home, they saw it too. I pulled over, we looked at it, and then just in an instant, it was gone. I don't know if it just winked out or if it went straight up, but I got the impression of upward movement. But again, it was just like that, so I can't say for sure. But whatever it was, totally silent, no lights. I don't know if it was one of ours, one of theirs. But of course, Las Vegas, you're not too far from Area 51. And then I've been out there. I've been on Freedom Ridge back when you could get on it. And there's some strange stuff going on out there for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll move on with some questions, guys. AMG has got a few questions in tonight as AMG. Is the paranormal the freaky deaky part of the Matrix? Matrix, just like a world stage?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if you think about it, if you had, say, goldfish in a bowl and you were putting weird things up for them to look at and then taking it away, kind of like that. Maybe we are an alien ant farm. We're somebody's sea monkeys, and they're entertaining us with flashing lights and hand puppets and things just to see how we react. I mean, anything is possible. That Matrix theory, I've covered stories where the glitch in the Matrix type stories. It's just unimaginable, some of the things that people have experienced. Now, part of that can be hallucinatory or due to mental illness or things, but I don't think every single incident that I've read or encountered, it's imagined or because of drugs or mental abilities or anything like that. Yeah. I think there are just things that are high strangeness that have no explanation.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on with this one from AMG again. And do the aliens have the key to immortal life?
I don't know. I kind of think that they don't. And that's one of the reasons that they want us, that we have something they want. And I think it's possible, and I've heard this put forth, this is just a theory, not necessarily one that I subscribe to, that they need our life essence. They need our souls.
I knew you were going to say that.
That's what they don't have. Now, that kind of brings it back into the realm of the Nephilim and the fallen angels and stuff. We have souls, they don't. So maybe they're trying to come up with some way to extract that out of us so they can have it. Who knows? I mean, I've heard that conjectured, but again, it's just conjecture at this point.
Yeah, well, there's a good question from AMG again. Is the paranormal aliens part of the zoo too?
I think it points to that, because in a lot of areas where you have a lot of activity in one, you have activity in the other. Like I mentioned, Mount Shasta, you've got everything there. There's Bigfoot, there's hauntings, there's fae folk on the can't think of the name of the falls there, but they've seen fairy folk around that. And it's Shasta seems like it's just an international airport for UFOs, all kinds of lights and things up there. And I've talked to people that have spent time up on the mountain that have seen what they call tree people or Sasquatch, that have experienced UFOs and craft and things. So who knows?
And AMG, have you paid Les to ask these questions?
He probably has, because I've got at least another one from AMG. And
just remember, there's other people here, Les.
Well, I can only do them in order, so I'll just beat up the spout without a paddle, if that makes any sense. It probably doesn't. AMG, seeing how we are made of electric, is there electricity in space, or is there no life without electric?
I don't know. I can see both. I'm not a scientist, but I can see that. I mean, there are charges in space. I mean, you have your coronal mass ejections and things like that play havoc with our electronics. So I'm assuming that there is an electric or electricity component in that. Lightning has electricity, but again, that's in our atmosphere. That's not out in space. But there are solar storms and things out there, and I think the electricity, that's probably the spark of life. I mean, the Big Bang and all that. And our brains, that's the way they fire, is based on electricity. Of a sort.
Yeah, so AMG has not got the next question in.
Good.
It's from Mark Carroll. Steve, do you think that Holden has inherited your gifts?
I like to think so. I like to think that he'll have that intuitiveness and the empathic abilities and things that a lot of that, is just having an open mind and a curious mind. And I'm pretty sure he's going to have both those. He's aware. He looks around a lot. He watches everything, even at 3 weeks old. And I've had several different people say that he's an old soul, and that's what I've heard about me when I was a kid. So I hope so. I hope he has the best of them, and then I'll be around to guide him through the questions and discovering what he can understand and things like that.
Do you find yourself talking about different parts of the subject when you're away from all these accounts that you're getting with Nicole, and do you find yourself like going over and discussing the phenomena?
Oh yeah, that's we've been friends for years before we got together and got married, but we have very similar ideas about a lot of stuff, and she helped me with research and things. That was the way we first met. She was helping me write a book about New England, and we just kind of clicked and found out that we had a lot of things in common, and she's an old soul too.
Yeah, brilliant.
Even though she's 22 years younger than I am. Old soul is relative. I mean, the baby's got an old soul. But
you've just shown us an old soul who's 3 weeks old. So there you go.
Not so much a question from Tony Worrell, but he's stating that national parks in America are so vast, plus you get idiots going into them. It's no wonder people go missing. That's not to say that some disappearances are strange.
Yeah,
good point.
The ones that are truly strange, I think, are in the minority. A lot of the cases that I cover, it's just due to things, people doing what they should know better. And I hate to sound like that, but I've seen video of like people up on Angel Rock and places like that running, and just you take risk, that it's going to catch up with you eventually.
So you've thrown it out there, and I'm assuming that there's an absolutely devastating drop below Angel Rock. Describe Angel Rock to us, because I don't know.
It's a precipice out in the kind of in the edge of the desert there. It's very steep. There's a path you can get up there, but one false move and you're gone.
That's
it. Yeah. I covered a case where a lady, she didn't die, but she got really messed up, and she said it was my own arrogance that was almost my downfall. She, I was experienced. I knew what I was doing. I thought it would never happen to me until it did. And she paid almost the ultimate price for it. So you have to be aware. I mean, nature is a harsh mistress. I've heard that said before, and it's true. And the outdoors, they're just, when you go out in one of these national parks or national forests or any place like the Grand Canyon or anything like that, you realize just how small and infinitesimal you are just compared to that area. And think of the other areas there. I mean, places where there's millions of acres and stuff, and you're just like this little speck. And there's all kinds of things out there that can hurt you or kill you, just natural things. Being ill-prepared, you don't have enough water, you don't dress appropriately. Hypothermia is a killer. It gets a lot of people. Yeah. But then there's the strange ones too, the ones that don't make any sense, the people that are very prepared, that know what they're doing, that don't take risks, and they still go missing.
Yeah.
And there's certain, there's clusters in different areas in national parks. And a lot of those, if you overlay a map of the cave systems in the United States and the clusters where disappearances happen, they kind of line up. So it makes you wonder, is there something underground, or is that, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in synchronicity. I believe there's something to all that.
And when you say there's clusters, do you also note then, Steve, that where they're going missing, there's not just cryptid sightings, but the UFO sightings? Is it like a mixture of all the phenomena in these cluster areas?
It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the national parks, how did those get chosen for where they are, or was there a reason for that? Again, it's so many. It just boggles the mind. There's so many different ways to pursue that, but I think there's something to the containment theory. And then I think it's crimes of opportunity. Serial killers and things like that have chosen those places as a hunting ground because they know, it's isolated. The FBI estimated at one time there was more than one serial killer working up and down the Appalachian Trail. I mean, you think about that. There's been people that have been murdered on the trail, but also it passes through all kinds of little towns and stuff along the way. You could hop off the trail, do your dastardly deeds, get back on the trail, continue on. And when law enforcement, they do these roadblocks and stuff and check people, that's on the highways. I don't know of them checking people on the trail and things like that. I don't want to give anybody any ideas there. But
and it's not just that, Steve. I mean, we kind of picked up on it. We're talking to the gamekeeper when we made Wolflands, that you're talking about on the trail, and we're not talking about thousands and thousands of miles, but we're talking about big forests. And he said people rarely actually go off the path of the known walks and roadways, the sort of logging roads. So when you get inside there, you could just lose somebody if you wanted to.
Yeah. And if you look at some of these national parks and watch a video, we kind of zoom out or zoom out rather, where you see it and then you go back and back and back. And the trees, look like those giant sequoias look about this big. So a person's going to be about the size of an ant. You could so easily, and if they don't know what trail you're on or where you were going, or if you left the trail, which direction you went, it's literally like looking for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
A lot of people are found by chance, I think. And then again, if they thought you went this way and you went the other way, they're going in the wrong direction to look for you. So that's why it's important. I've got a video that I've put together that I haven't released yet, how not to go missing. And it talks about stuff like that. Leave an itinerary with somebody. Stay on marked trails. Let somebody know where you're going, when you tend to be back, or when you expect to be back, rather. Stay in touch. Take a personal locator beacon with you. You can rent a satellite phone. They're expensive, but how much compared to your life, There are ways to protect yourself. Or the number one is to stay home. I'd hate to be there are people vanished from their homes too, but you're much less likely to go missing on the trail if you watch it on TV instead of being out there in person.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve. Lee Roscoe is asking, Steve, are you finding more people are going missing year by year? Are the numbers going up?
It seems that way, but again, I can't say are there more happening or they're just we're more aware of it. And I saw some figures the other day. I think they estimate that at any given time, there's about 600,000 people missing in the United States. I mean, that's a lot of people, but some of those are runaways. Some of those are found. It's hard to get an accurate constant number. It varies, but there are, it's a much smaller number, but there are people that disappear that are never found, no trace or anything.
Yeah. Have we more questions? Are you okay with questions, Steve?
Yeah. Don't know how good our answer I'll give, but
you're answering them amazingly, and I think we've got 15 minutes left, and we are going to devote a minute or 2 minutes at least for Steve to talk about his channel as well, Les, aren't we?
Sure. Heatso64, Steve, why do you think that right, I don't know what his acronym is.
That's the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women.
Right.
Okay. That's what he's referencing there.
Right, yeah.
In New Mexico. And it's not just in New Mexico, it's everywhere. I lived in New Mexico for about a year, right in the edge of the Navajo Reservation. I was in Farmington, which is close to the Colorado border. But it's a lot of it is just the culture, the Highway of Tears up in Canada, talking about poverty-stricken areas. There's no work. There's not much up there. Those people have been kind of abandoned by the government. And I don't mean it dismissively, those people. I'm talking about the Native Americans or the indigenous. But the women in particular, they're vulnerable. They hitchhike. There's signs up there, do not hitchhike, but yet they do. And again, that's just people that do these crimes of opportunity.
Yeah.
There was a lady that went missing right there in Farmington where I lived in front of the school. And there were several big cases out there. Ella Mae Begay was one of them. And I think she was abducted from her home and things. But it's just a lot of it has to do with also on the reservation there, they have their own police force and things. And I'd say they're understaffed and ill-equipped to cover things like that. And there's a lot of racism there toward the Native Americans too. Like, well, you've got your own police force, let them take care of it. Now the FBI will come in when it's their jurisdiction, but sometimes the tribal police don't want the FBI, don't want the feds in there. So it's they call that linkage blindness, where one agency doesn't talk to the other too much. But it's just, I think a lot of that is just a happenstance and crimes of opportunity. But and you start digging into that. Out in the Southwest there and up north, like I said, the Highway of Tears in Canada, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of those women that go missing. There's all kinds of murder, trafficking, drug related. There's everything out there on the reservation, sadly.
Do you know what I like about listening to you, Steve, is the fact that you're not so blinded that everything's got to be paranormal or unexplained.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's we've got to stay grounded, because as you know, I'm not telling anybody here, as everybody in chat knows, 99.9% of this will be some kind of earthbound explanation. It's that little grain that we're looking for, isn't it?
Yeah. And somebody, there are people out there that report on the cases that try to make everything spooky and sensational. Sadly, it's not that way. And unfortunately, some of those cases, they've omitted a lot of facts, and that it only appears spooky until you hear the entire story. And I'm not going to shame or point fingers at anybody, but do your own research.
Okay.
But I try not to do that. And the ones that I think are have a supernatural element, I look at it from all sides and say, you know, there's just something here that doesn't add up.
Strange,
and another thing that I've heard recently is there's a short story called I just lost the name of it. It's about hunting humans.
Right.
The most exciting game, or the most adventurous, something. I can't remember the name of it. Lost it. But if you think about that, the most dangerous game is a famous short story where the man was a big game hunter and decided that he wanted a real challenge, so he was going to hunt humans. And if you kind of transpose that, if you think about that, when I lived in Portland, Oregon, there's a thing there called the Shanghai Tunnels from the 1800s. It's parts of it are still there. And you go into a bar, a brothel. Portland was a wild, wild town in the Wild West. And then you go into a bar, you get slipped a Mickey, pass out, they drop you down a chute into these tunnels underneath wherever place you're at. Well, before they drop you down in there, they take your shoes off. So if you come to before you're on a ship headed for the Orient, that's where they got the Shanghai Tunnels. You're in on a boat and had to work your passage back. But if you did come to, you're in these tunnels, it's dark, and I've been down there. You can tour what's left. The bottom of the tunnels is really, really sandy. And they led all the way to the Willamette and the Columbia Rivers there. The bottom of the floor is sandy, and it's covered in broken glass. So you come to, you're hungover, you're woozy, you've been drugged, you're in the dark, you don't have any shoes, and the floor is covered with broken glass. You're not going anywhere, not quickly. Well, you think about that. A lot of these cases, they find the people's boots or shoes, sometimes placed right side by side on a rock or hanging from a tree. If you were going to hunt humans and you want them to at least have a sporting chance, take their shoes, turn them loose in the brush and say, okay, I'm going to give you a 10-minute head start. You better take off. But if you don't have any shoes on, you're not going to be able to run far enough to actually get away. If somebody were hunting you or something, I mean, it could be something supernatural even. Alien. If we're going to hunt humans, what better way to do it to give them a head start, but no shoes. They're not going to get far. A lot of people have been found missing their shoes and boots. Just tossing that out there.
No, I think it's a great point. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Steve. This one's not for you, Steve, but the Paranormal Coffee Lounge, Paul and Les, can Sunday's show be 30 minutes longer? Gets me out of the washing up.
I don't do any washing up, but the thing is,
we have done longer shows, actually. We've done extra shows, and we've done a couple of longer shows on a Sunday as well.
We have. The thing is, you have to be somewhere, don't you?
I've got to be somewhere.
I suppose I could probably sit in it for 30 minutes longer, but we'll consider it, Terry. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, and let's have a look. Al Durham.
Oh, good to see you, Al.
Worcester, MA, is that Massachusetts?
I don't know if that still exists or not. I haven't been there. If it is, my baby was born at the hospital in Worcester. But let's see. Let me Google it real quick.
This Worcester diner was fab. Does it still exist? Now, Steve, Al's saying was fab. Unless I'm missing something, it implies that he knows. I don't know.
It says it's a classic old-fashioned diner from the 1940s. Complete with comfort food and bustling lunch counter. It says it's closed right now, but it looks like it's still open for breakfast and lunch. So I'll have to check it out.
We'll try it in morning, Al.
We'll go in morning. Yeah,
we'll go for breakfast.
I'm done with questions.
Looks amazing.
I'm
Well,
done with,
we've
I'm
got
done with
8
questions on my list, Paul. So if you want
Okay.
to get another item in,
Well,
go
we've
for it.
got 8 minutes left. So before we get another item in, I want Steve to talk about the channels and getting our absolutely amazing audience here over to listen to you share some of these incredible accounts.
Okay. Well, the main channel for the missing is Missing Persons and Mysteries. And it's just what it sounds like. It's mainly focused on the missing person stuff. Now, the mystery side of that, we take that some leeway there. We've got cryptids and strange stories. They're listener stories, people sending in their experiences, hauntings, cryptids, weird stuff. But the missing will always be the primary focus. And my mission statement, if I have one, is if we can bring one person home, or worst case scenario, give one family closure, then I'm doing what's been laid on my heart to do. To me, any one missing person is not any more or less important than any other missing person. So I try to give everybody equal time. And sadly, there's just so many cases, and that's horrible, that I could never cover all the cases that are out there. So I try to cover where I can. Now, there are certain cases, that the media will pick up on and run with. But I try to do a good mix in there, the well-known cases and then some of the really obscure ones too. But can you imagine losing a child, a family member, husband, wife, anybody, and not knowing? That would have to be the worst. I mean, at least if they're found, even deceased, you've got ashes that you can put on the mantle, or you've got a grave that you can go visit. But to not know, that would be the worst, I think.
Yeah.
Or that would just, that would tugs at my heartstrings to think that there's people like Dennis Martin's dad to go to the grave with the son missing over 50 years, no closure whatsoever.
No, and I'm right in saying that some of your live streams, I mean, we do 2 hours, and Terry's just said, can we do an extra 30 minutes? Some of them, tell them how many hours you've ran.
I usually run about 10 hours, but now granted, sometimes I put up a playlist of videos and I'll go off camera for a while.
Change your nappy and do a bottle.
Yeah. But I've had some some Halloween streams that were over 24 hours, but I don't know that I'll be doing those anymore. But I like to learn at least a good 5, 6, 7 hours, sometimes 10. But I enjoy those. I come on, chat, I'll show some videos, then come on, talk with the people, tell stories. Just depends on the channel.
I've joined them. People in chat, I've joined them and they're brilliant. I've helped him moderate on a few of them,
I've gone in.
Absolutely brilliant.
Had like 800 people in there at 3 o'clock in the morning before, so, but it resonates with people. People enjoy what I do. They like hearing my voice. I get that all the time, that I have the voice that helps people with PTSD or chronic pain, fibromyalgia, insomnia. If I can help you sleep, God bless you. Because I've had people apologize. Sorry, I like to listen to your stream, Steve, but I always go to sleep. Hey, again, God bless you. If I can help you, I help you.
That don't mean you're boring them, does it, Steve? You're not boring them.
Not at all. It's just the tone and the timbre and the cadence.
So the books, they're all available on Amazon, yeah?
Yeah, there are. I've only got one here that I can put my hand on. I usually have more laying here, but I gave some away the other day. Strange Things in the Woods, that was one that started off. That's stories that I heard growing up from friends and family and friends of family and things like that. I've been putting this one together since I was like 12 years old, and then it just kind of took off from there. I published my 20th book last year, and I'm working on number 21 right now, and it's probably going to be a multi-volume set.
Yeah,
because I'm already almost 100,000 words.
Brilliant. Well, do you know, some people, I think that's the least we can do, allowing Steve to devote 4 or 5 minutes to promoting his own work.
And I appreciate that. I really do. And I've got other channels. I've got From Beyond, which is my UFO, UAP, and related phenomena channel. Now, last night we talked about vampires in New England, but I have a good time over there. And then Tales Untold. That's my storytelling channel. There's some true stories over there, and then there's some fictional stuff too, and some stuff that's based in reality, that's based on a true story, that kind of thing. That I have fun telling stories.
Well, and, we've literally got 3 minutes, but I just want to touch on something. You said the word, because vampires is I mean, because it's something I've never looked into. And bear in mind, we've probably got 2 to 3 minutes. What are your views on this?
Oh, there's some. I don't know. I'm still looking into it. I'm working on something about
Is this new
vampires.
to you then, Steve? Is this a new one on you?
Not really, but here in New England, in particular, there was a vampire panic in the 1800s. Now, a lot of it was related to tuberculosis or consumption, as it was known at the time. But they believed in it. They dug up exhumed bodies of their relatives, and in some cases, they were found. They hadn't decayed. There was maybe still blood in their heart or in their mouth, and part of the ritual was to cut out the heart and burn it, and then feed those ashes to other people that were sick to try to destroy the bloodline. So I'm still uncorking that one, but it was a real panic here in New England. The most famous case was in Exeter, Rhode Island, which is just up the road from me here. Mercy Brown. The family thought she was coming back and taking other members of her family. They exhumed the body. Sure enough, she hadn't decayed or anything, still had fresh blood, I think, in her heart and in her mouth. They removed her heart, cooked it, and fed it to her little brother. He died anyway, but it did stop after that. But again, it was tuberculosis / consumption and superstitious folk.
So we've got what basically then what you're saying is we've got superstitions and nothing with any substance there, really, have we?
Well, it's hard to say for sure. I think even in superstition, there's a nugget of reality. There's a little bit of truth in there. You have to dig for it sometimes.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
It's worth looking into.
Well, I'm going to just pull Les back in to say goodbye to you. And if he comes back in, come on, Les. There we go. Let's add Les to there. Oh, he did it same time as me. Steve, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Les, I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for letting me bring my son on. Look forward to more of him in the future. I'm going to raise him up to be a raconteur, a storyteller, a narrator, and a writer like I am. Hopefully he shows an interest in those things.
Yeah, if he gets to that position, Steve, we're definitely going to invite him onto Truth Proof YouTube channel
in the future. But yeah, he was I read stories to him in the womb, told stories to him, and now he likes to lay down and sleep listening to my YouTube channel. So if he does it, he'll come by it honest.
Brilliant. Steve, thank you. And I'll say good night.
Yeah, we'll say good night. And on that note, folks, we'll see you all on Sunday night for our regular Truth Proof Interactive. And as we said earlier, we do have a report to report on, and which is quite interesting. A great sighting from a small village in East Yorkshire Wolds. Yep. On that note, we are leaving, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you, Steve Stockton.
Have a good night, everybody. See you a little further on down the trail. Tell your animals I said hi.
Thank you.